There are some kinds of heartbreak that don't come from betrayal. They come from quiet absence, from being there for someone who never showed up for you in the same way, from giving everything, your heart, your softness, your time, only to realize that they didn't choose you. They liked your light. They needed your comfort. But when it came time to stand beside you, they hesitated. Or worse, they disappeared. And Cancer, I know how deeply that cuts. Because when you love, you don't just dip your toes in. You dive. You pour. You believe. You saw something in them. Something worth fighting for. Something that made you say, maybe this time, they won't leave. So you tried harder. You held space for them when they were cold. You stayed up late just to hear their pain. You forgave things you were never given the space to express. You loved them in silence, hoping that one day they would hear it. But the truth is, you were loving someone who was never ready to receive it. And I want you to hear this with your whole heart. That does not make your love a mistake. You didn't lose because they didn't choose you. You didn't fail because they couldn't match your depth. You didn't overlove. You didn't scare them away. You simply carried a kind of heart that they didn't know how to hold. And that's not your fault. It's not your job to shrink your softness, just so others feel more comfortable. It's not your job to beg for love. It's not your job to twist yourself into smaller versions just to fit into someone else's half-built world. You were not chosen, but that doesn't mean you weren't worthy. In fact, the way you showed up, with all that tenderness, with all that loyalty, with all that brave, open-hearted energy, it speaks volumes about who you are, not what you lack. And even if they never said thank you, even if they moved on like you never existed, even if you never got closure, you deserve to know your love was real, and it was enough. So don't let the silence they left behind become the way you speak to yourself. Don't take their absence and turn it into self-rejection. Don't tell yourself, if I were different, they would have stayed. Because here's the thing, when you love as deeply as you do, Cancer, you're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. There's something heavy that lives inside you now. A hesitation, a quiet shame. Like maybe you loved too much. Like maybe if you had been a little colder, a little more guarded, they might have stayed. And so you replay it over and over. The texts you sent, the tears you cried, the way you opened your soul like a doorway, and they simply walked past it. You wonder, was I too much? Did I move too fast? Was my love overwhelming? But Cancer, pause. Breathe. Let me tell you something that could change the way you hold this story. You were not wrong to love that much. Your love wasn't the problem. The world may tell you that vulnerability is weakness, that expressing affection too soon is desperation, that caring deeply is naive. But I say no, it is courageous. It is sacred. It is a revolutionary act to love in a world that tells you to be cold. You are not broken because your heart opened easily. You are beautifully intact because it still does, even after the storms. Think about it. You saw someone's pain and wanted to soothe it. You noticed their silence and offered presence. You felt their fear and held space instead of running away. That is not weakness. That is divinity. The ones who call you too much are often the ones who can only give too little, and that has nothing to do with your value. You see, when someone drinks from your ocean and still says they're thirsty, the problem isn't that the water was too deep, it's that they didn't come ready to swim. And still, you loved, with the gentleness of a moonlight confession, with the consistency of waves that kiss the same shore again and again, even when it hurts, even when it costs you pieces of yourself. That is not foolish. That is holy. So stop apologizing for the way your love pulses like tides. Stop calling your kindness a flaw. Stop labeling your tenderness as weakness. Because the truth is, you are a rare kind of heart. And yes, it may take a while to find someone who speaks your language, who holds you with the same depth, who doesn't flinch at your intensity, but bows to it. But until then, let this be your reminder. You were not wrong to love that much. You were brave to risk that much. You were pure to give that much. And you are still worthy of receiving that kind of love in return. Maybe they weren't the one, but that doesn't mean your love wasn't true. It means your heart is preparing for something greater, something reciprocal, something sacred. So let your love keep flowing, not toward them, but back into you. Some people are not hungry for love. They are starving for control, for distraction, for comfort without commitment, for presence without responsibility. And when someone like you comes along, someone who loves with truth in their chest and light in their eyes, it terrifies them. They look at you and see something they don't yet believe they deserve. They see clarity. They see loyalty. They see the mirror of everything they've tried to avoid within themselves. And so they reject it. Not because your love was too much, but because it was real. You need to understand this, Cancer. When someone cannot receive the love you offer, it says more about their wounds than your worth. It's easy to internalize the silence, to replay the unanswered messages, to feel the ache of being seen, but not chosen. But what if? What if they never knew how to be chosen themselves? What if love was never modeled for them in softness? What if their nervous system only knows chaos, and your calm felt like a threat? It doesn't excuse how they treated you, but it does release you from the lie that you were to blame. You are not the reason they couldn't stay. You are not the reason they pulled away when things got deep. You are not the reason they couldn't look you in the eyes when you said, "I care." Oh, they may have wanted you, but wanting and being ready are not the same thing. You see, there are people in this world who are still learning how to feel safe with love. They don't know what to do with kindness that asks for nothing. They don't know how to rest in affection that doesn't come with strings. They're not used to being fully seen, and your gaze was too honest for their comfort. And I know that doesn't make the pain go away, but it does help you understand. It was never about you being unworthy. Sometimes, the love you give is a foreign language to someone who's only ever known war. And your peace felt like silence. Your honesty felt like exposure. Your consistency felt like pressure. But none of that means your love was wrong. It means their heart wasn't yet ready for something so right. You were the sunrise to someone who had only known storms, and they shut the blinds. Not because the sun was cruel, but because their eyes had never adjusted to that kind of light. So now, take that truth and set yourself free. Let the chains of guilt fall from your shoulders. Let the weight of, "I should have been different," dissolve into compassion. You were exactly who you were meant to be. You loved exactly how your soul needed to love. And if they couldn't receive it, that was never your fault. There are some wounds that never got the chance to bleed in the open. They sat quietly beneath your skin, unspoken, unprocessed, unacknowledged, and you smiled through them. You said you were fine. You said, "It's okay, they're just not ready." You buried the ache beneath logic. You wrapped it in compassion. You told yourself they didn't mean to hurt you. But Cancer, the heart remembers. No matter how much you rationalize it, no matter how forgiving your spirit is, there are truths that your soul still wants to whisper. "That hurt me. I waited for them to choose me and they never did. I gave everything and they didn't even look back." And that's where the Three of Swords lives. Not in drama, not in victimhood, but in the honest ache of what was never said. This card is not here to punish you. It's not here to remind you of the pain so you stay stuck. It's here to finally give the pain a voice, so it can be witnessed. So let it speak. Let the grief come. Let the tears fall without guilt. You're not being too emotional. You're not dwelling on the past. You're releasing a truth that was never safe to speak before. You see, cancers are known for holding it in, for retreating into their shell when the world gets loud, for protecting others from their own pain, even if it means swallowing it whole. But right now, you don't have to protect anyone else. This space is for you. And your heartbreak? It deserves to be honored. Not to glorify suffering, but to respect the depth of what you've endured. Because when you love with everything, when you show up with tenderness, vulnerability, and fierce loyalty, and someone leaves without explanation, without closure, without holding your heart carefully in return, that leaves a scar, and it's okay to admit it. It's okay to say, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm tired of being the one who feels everything while they move on like it meant nothing. Your feelings are valid. Even the dark ones, even the ones you think are unspiritual or immature. The Three of Swords reminds you that healing doesn't come from pretending you're over it. Healing comes from honoring the heartbreak, from sitting with it, from naming it. So today, if you feel that lump in your throat, if your chest feels heavy, if a song brings back memories that sting, don't run from it. Breathe into it. Hold space for it. Say to your heart, I see you. I know this still hurts, and that's okay. Because when the pain is finally heard, it begins to soften, and from that softness, you begin to rise. Cancer, the world has never quite known what to do with a heart like yours. You feel too much. You notice too much. You remember things others forget. The way their voice cracked that one time. The way their energy shifted in a crowded room. The silent goodbyes they never said, but you felt them anyway. And somewhere along the way, they made you believe that this sensitivity was a flaw, a weight, a problem they had to tiptoe around. They called you dramatic. Too emocional. Too intense. They said you took things too personally. They told you to calm down, to not care so much. And so you started to shrink. You began filtering your words, holding back your affection, pretending not to care as much as you do. Not because your heart changed, but because you didn't want to scare them away. But listen to me now. You were never too much. You were just too real for people who were used to faking it. In a world that rewards emotional numbness, your depth is a rebellion. Your softness is a superpower. Your truth is a gift most people don't know how to unwrap. And yes, sometimes that gift is rejected, not because it's unworthy, but because it forces people to confront the parts of themselves they keep buried. When you love, it's not casual. You don't half feel. You don't play games. Your loyalty is sacred. Your presence is all in. Your love doesn't knock on doors, it builds homes. And not everyone is ready for that kind of devotion. Not everyone can hold something so honest. But their inability to receive you does not mean you are too much. It means they are still hiding from the parts of themselves you were brave enough to show them. You see, people like you mirror what others are afraid to admit, that we're all aching to be seen, to be held, to be understood. And when you look at someone with that kind of emotional clarity, with that kind of unconditional care, they either open up or run. But either way, it's not your fault. It's not your job to dilute your spirit just so someone else can swallow it. It's not your purpose to shrink yourself into someone else's comfort zone. You are not overwhelming. They were underprepared. You are not too deep. They were too shallow. You are not too intense. They were just not ready for something real. So please, stop apologizing for being a full-hearted, all-in, deeply feeling soul. You don't need to be less of anything. You don't need to tone it down. You don't need to hide your magic to be loved. Because the right people, they won't be scared of your waves. They will swim in them. They will dive deep to meet you where you are. And they will say, "Thank God, someone like you exists." So until then, promise me this: never ever again confuse your emotional truth with being too much. You are not too much. You were just too real. And that is your power. There's a misconception out there, Cancer, that love is something to be earned, that it must be reciprocated to be real, that if it isn't returned in the form we hoped for, it was wasted. But here's the truth. Your love is not a business deal. It's not a contract with conditions. It's not a transaction that demands payment in equal measure. Your love is a frequency, a vibration, a song your soul sings simply because that's who you are. It doesn't disappear just because someone didn't echo it back. It doesn't lose value just because it wasn't received the way you imagined. Cancer, you were born to feel, to connect, to pour into others not because they deserved it, but because your heart knew no other way to be. And yes, sometimes that love lands in the wrong hands. Sometimes it falls into silence. Sometimes it's misunderstood, misused, or simply left behind. But that does not mean you gave it in vain. Imagine this. You sing a lullaby into the night sky. No one responds. No echo comes back. But the stars heard you. The universe recorded it. And somewhere, someone felt the warmth of your voice even if you never knew it. That is what your love does. It moves through space, through time, through unseen realms. It's energy, and energy doesn't need permission to exist. So even if they didn't say thank you, even if they left you on red, even if they ghosted, disappeared, or treated your heart like it was disposable, you still loved. And that matters, because you are not here to be loved back. You are here to be love itself. You're not here to play emotional poker, giving just enough so you don't lose too much. You're here to be a lighthouse, to shine, regardless of whether anyone sees you. And yes, that can be lonely. Yes, it can feel unfair. But the magic is this: your love is never wasted. Even when it isn't returned, it still transforms you. It makes you softer, stronger, more alive. It teaches you who you are beneath the longing. It carves rivers through your soul where depth can now live. And one day, someone will swim in those rivers and say, "I've never felt anything like this before." But even if they never do, even if no one arrives with roses and clarity, you must remember, you are already whole. Your love didn't need to be returned to be valid. It needed only to be expressed, fully, honestly, bravely. And that's exactly what you did. So stop measuring the worth of your heart by how someone else handled it. Stop doubting your gift just because they dropped it. Stop asking if it was too much or not enough, because your love is not a commodity. It is a frequency, and the world is better because you let it sing. Cancer, there are moments in life when we look back and wonder, was I the problem? Was I too much? Did I mess it all up? You replay the conversations, the silences, the moment they pulled away, without warning, without closure. And somehow, you blame yourself, because you're the one who loved the most. You're the one who still feels the echo. You're the one still standing there, holding memories like glass in your bare hands. But let me say this to you gently, with all the love in the universe. You were not the mistake. You were the lesson. You were the mirror they didn't know they needed. You were the emotional depth they hadn't yet earned. You were the kindness that felt foreign to their wounds. You were the presence that made them question everything they thought love was. And because they weren't ready, they didn't stay. That doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean you were too much. That doesn't mean you were wrong to give your all. It means you offered something true, and they weren't ready to meet it with the same level of truth. You see, not every connection is meant to last, but every connection teaches. And sometimes, you're not the one who needed the lesson. You were the lesson. You taught them what it feels like to be seen, to be held without conditions, to be loved without performance. And that scared them, because once you've tasted that kind of purity, you can never unknow it. They may not admit it. They may act like they've moved on, like it meant nothing, like you were just a phase. But deep down, they remember. They carry your imprint in the quiet moments. When they meet someone new who doesn't look at them the way you did, when they long for comfort but can't find it, when they realize that love is not about being entertained, it's about being understood. And you, dear Cancer, you understood them in a way they didn't even understand themselves. That's why it hurt when they left, because you didn't just lose someone you loved, you lost someone you believed in. But please don't twist that into self-blame. Don't wear their unhealed wounds like they're your responsibility. Don't call it your failure just because they weren't brave enough to stay. You were light in their darkness. You were stillness in their chaos. You were healing wrapped in human form. They may not have seen it. Or maybe they did, and that's exactly why they ran. Because to love you fully would require them to evolve, to rise, to face themselves. And not everyone is ready for that kind of transformation. But one day, they will remember. Maybe not out loud, maybe not with an apology, but in the silence of their own becoming. And you will already be beyond them, wiser, softer, stronger, because you didn't just survive the heartbreak, you learned that your worth was never dependent on their ability to love you. You were the lesson, Cancer, the high standard, the heart they couldn't forget, even if they tried. And that is nothing to grieve. That is something to honor. There's a moment, quiet and unassuming, when you realize you're no longer waiting. No longer waiting for a text, for an apology, for a sudden realization on their part that you were always the one. And in that silence, you don't feel sad. You feel free. Cancer, you've held on for so long. Not because you're weak, but because your heart was loyal. You believed in the possibility, in the version of them that maybe didn't even exist, but you felt it could. You waited with grace. You held space in your heart. You whispered their name in prayers they never heard. But now, it's time to exhale. Because when you let go, not from anger, not from bitterness, but from peace, and you make room for clarity, room for truth, room for the life you were meant to live before they became the center of it. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop shrinking. You stop bending over backward hoping they'll finally see you. You stop rereading old messages trying to decode what went wrong. You stop putting your life on pause for someone who already pressed play and walked away. You start choosing yourself. You begin to understand that love is not about holding tighter. It's about holding true. And the truest love? It flows. It breathes. It meets you in your wholeness, not in your waiting. Cancer, your heart is not a waiting room. It's a cathedral. A sacred place meant to be filled with voices that echo your own value. So when you release them, you're not throwing anything away. You're clearing the altar. You're creating space for new energy, new love, new joy that doesn't feel like negotiation. Because when you let go, you let in peace that doesn't depend on their behavior, joy that doesn't vanish when they don't text back, love that doesn't ask you to prove your worth first, a version of yourself who doesn't need them to feel whole. And it's in that version of you, that rising, glowing, self-honoring version, that life begins again. It's not always easy. Letting go can feel like giving up, but it's not. You're not giving up. You're growing up. You're choosing your own voice over their silence, your own peace over their chaos, your own future over a past that kept you small. And that is a sacred act of love, not for them, for you. Cancer, it's okay if it still aches sometimes. It's okay if the healing hasn't arrived in a neat, perfect box. You are not broken because you still feel. You are brave because you still feel. Grief doesn't come with an expiration date, but pain is not your forever home. It was just a place your soul passed through. Yes, the heartbreak cracked you open. It took parts of you thought you'd never lose. It made you question your worth. It made you lie awake, wondering if love is worth it at all. But my dear Cancer, your heart was never meant to break forever. That's not its design. That's not your destiny. Your heart was made to heal, to bloom again, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. Like a forest that regrows after the fire, like a river that carves through stone, your love becomes wider, deeper, truer after the breaking. Yes, you may carry the scar, but the scar is proof that healing happened. It's not a mark of weakness. It's a signature of survival. You survived. You loved and lost, and still, here you are, breathing, feeling, hoping. You are softer now, but not weaker. You are wiser now, but not colder. You learned how to hold space for your own soul when no one else showed up, and that is power. There will come a day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but it will come when you wake up and realize the weight is gone. The ache has shifted into wisdom. The longing has faded into gratitude. The story no longer stings. It simply is. And you'll smile, not because it didn't hurt, but because it did, and you grew from it. The people who left, the love that ended, the unanswered questions, they were all part of the journey that led you home to yourself. So no, your heart wasn't meant to be shattered beyond repair. It was meant to break open so that the light could find a way in. And now, that same light begins to radiate out. From you, the tenderness in your eyes, the strength in your quiet, the peace in your presence. Cancer, you were not destroyed. You were transformed. You are not the person who begged to be chosen. You are the one who finally chose yourself. And that kind of love, that self-honoring, soul-deep, grounded love, it's unshakable. Because now you know, your heart is not fragile. It is resilient. It is wise. It is whole. Not because nothing ever hurt it, but because everything did. And still, it rises. Cancer, for so long you waited. For the text. For the conversation. For the closure. You thought, if I could just understand why, if they could just say sorry, if we could talk one last time, maybe I could move on. But the truth? Closure doesn't come from them. It never really did. It's not in their explanation, their regret, or their sudden realization too late. Closure is a door you build with your own hands, with your own heart, when you finally stop asking for permission to heal. It's when you stop rehearsing the perfect words you'd say if they ever returned. It's when you stop checking if they've watched your story, liked your photo, or missed you in secret. It's when you look in the mirror and say, I don't need anything from them anymore, because I have me. You create closure when you stop letting your past dictate your present. When you stop needing someone else to validate your pain in order for it to be real. Because it was real. Even if they walked away like it meant nothing, you know it meant everything. You loved with your whole being. You gave what you had. You stayed soft in a world that tried to harden you. And that is not foolishness. That is courage. And now, closure looks like sleeping peacefully again. Laughing without guilt. Looking back without flinching. Dreaming again this time, with yourself at the center of the vision. Closure is not a conversation. It's a choice. To move forward, to forgive not for them, but for your own liberation. To bless the path behind you and step fully into the one ahead. Cancer, you are not the ending. You are the beginning. You are not the one waiting anymore. You are the one walking toward peace, toward joy, toward a life so rooted in self-love that no ghost from your past can unearth it again. So if they never explain, if the apology never comes, if the story remains unfinished, let it. You don't need their words to write your ending, because you've already begun a brand new chapter, where the love is mutual, the peace is deep, and the only closure you need is the sound of your own soul saying, "I'm home now, I'm whole now, and I'm free."